Hello, Rose.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
How are you on what went on in the late 30s on 3AW?
On the station, I'm not too hot, but we might be able to.
We'll give it a try.
Well, Nicky, Nancy Lee and Tuppy used to have, in conjunction with 3AW, a program on Saturday afternoons at the North Melbourne Town Hall in which you could win a box of Griffiths chocolates. Now, they don't make them nowadays, but I won one years ago. Can you tell me what it was for?
Was it called Chatterbox Corner?
It was Chatterbox Corner, but what was it? How did you win the... what competition was it?
I think it may have been a talent segment of their program, Young Talent Stars.
No.
Did you have to do impersonations?
No.
You had to... Well, you would have had to have performed to have won the prize.
Yes, well, performed in a sense. It was a competition.
Was it a fancy dress?
Competing against other children.
Was it fancy dress?
No.
It'd be difficult on radio, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Bringing in your pets?
No.
A quiz.
Child stars?
No child stars and no quiz.
So what was it, Rose?
It was a candle puffing competition.
Oh, we never would have guessed that.
No, they used to give you a candle and give you a match. You could light your match, and you had to light the candle and puff it out and see how many times you could do it without blowing your match out.
Goodness me.
And I won a box of Griffiths chocolates. I was so proud. I was so thrilled.
Yes.
In those days, that was a very big thing to get a box of chocolates.
Good on you, Rose.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you for the call, Rose.
That's all right.
All the very best.
I got you there, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yes, very good.
Okay.
Bye-bye, Rose. And hello to Harold.
Good evening, boys. I was just wondering if you remember the old cereal was on the wireless called the Black Tulip.
When was this, Harold, and on what station?
I'm not sure whether it was KZ or DB, but all this is going back 30 years. It could be more than 30 years.
No, it's a new one on me, Harold. The Black Tulip.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that remember it, Harold.
And also, one other thing, Johnny Wade, the old Australian singer, could you tell me what happened to him? And I haven't heard any of his music at all for a long, long time. Remember Johnny Wade? He used to sing Red Cross Nurse and...
Yes, he made a lot of records with the George Trevor Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't heard of him in years, Harold.
Yeah, I haven't heard any... You know, I used to play some of his records on the wireless, but he sort of just faded away, and I was just wondering...
Harold, he's alive and living in Sydney, we understand, yes.
Oh.
And I think he's a taxi driver.
Oh, that's a drop.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Thanks for the call, Harold. Okay, bye-bye. Hello, Jenny.
Oh, good evening, gentlemen.
Yes.
I just wondered if any of your listeners remembered, as a child, I'm now 87, when I was about 10, I had a pet snake, and Oscar Ashe and Lily Brayton came out from England to play Kismet. So they hired a room up at the top of Collins Street and made it into a bush setting and borrowed my snake for the season.
Oh, lovely.
That's very interesting, Jenny.
Yes, it's quite a long time ago.
Yes, I didn't know Kismet went back that far.
Oh, yes. And also, I wondered if any of the listeners remembered the Canterbury Gardens. We used to have films right down in the centre of the gardens, and we'd take a rug and sit there and watch the films on a Saturday night.
That'd be the Canterbury Gardens at the end of Baldwin Road, would it?
Yes, it is.
Right, I went to a wedding there last year. It's pretty there, isn't it?
Very pretty, yes. Well, the films used to be every Saturday, and we'd take our flask of coffee and our rug, and we'd sit up in the gardens.
Have you still got that pet snake of yours, Jenny?
No, I haven't, unfortunately. I had it for many years. It's now in the museum.
Oh, that's nice. Well, you can visit it.
What was it, a carpet snake, was it?
It was a diamond snake, 7'6".
And how long do they live normally, Jenny?
I had it for about 2 years.
And what would you feed it?
Anything it liked.
And mice. We'd catch some mice.
Yes.
Some mice.
Was it dangerous, Jenny?
No. Oh, no. My father was a botanist and entomologist to Victoria.
And it just curl itself around the fleur or the...
Yes, we kept it in the shed on its rug.
So now you've had it stuffed.
Yes, and it's in the museum now. I often go in and have a look at it.
Oh, how wonderful.
But memories, too, of your father, too, when you see that snake.
Father learned from Baron von Mueller. He was a botanist.
Oh, yes.
And so he got my pet snake for me for a pet.
Oh, that's very interesting, Jenny. Thanks for your call.
Thank you very much for the call, Jenny. Live from the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, Los Angeles, welcome to the 44th year of the Academy Awards. Standing center stage with the Price Waterhouse representatives and Pete Marwick Hungerford is Philip Brady about to pass the Oscar to the performers who win. The Best Picture of 1971. The nominations include A Clockwork Orange, Fiddler on the Roof, The French Connection, The Last Picture Show, and Nicholas and Alexandra. Would you pass the Oscar to the winning picture's producer, please?
I would like to give the Oscar, Bruce, to the producer of The French Connection.
And D'Artagnan, Sheen, and more from 20th Century Fox accepted. Lining up now for Best Actor of 1971 include Peter Finch, Sunday, Bloody Sunday, Gene Hackman, The French Connection, Walter Matthau, Koch, George C. Scott, The Hospital, and Topo for Fiddler on the Roof. Who are you going to hand it to?
Mr. Hackman will accept the award.
Mr. Hackman is doing so and bending on one knee. Thank you. The actresses are lined up now. Will you give it to Julie Christie for McCabe and Mrs. Miller? Jane Fonda for Clute. Glenda Jackson, Sunday, Bloody Sunday. Vanessa Redgrave, Mary, Queen of Scots. And Jane Sussman for Nicholas and Alexandra.
Who is the final nominee, please?
Jeanette Sussman.
Oh, gee, that's a good lineup, isn't it?
Well, don't ad lib. Just give it to the girl. She's waiting desperately.
Okay, I'm going to give the statuette to Jane Fonda.
And she accepts it and blows a kiss in your ear. Congratulations.
3 out of 3 so far.
The supporting actor for the year. They're lined up now with Jeff Bridges up front with The Last Picture Show. Leonard Fry, Fiddler on the Roof. Richard Jaco, Sometimes a Great Notion. Ben Johnson, The Last Picture Show. Roy Schneider, The French Connection.
Well, let's go with The French Connection again and give the supporting actor award to Roy Schneider.
I'm sorry, Ben Johnson has snatched it from him and glaring it straight at you.
Oh.
For The Last Picture Show. The supporting actresses include Ellen Burstyn, The Last Picture Show. Barbara Harris in Who is Harry Kellerman? Cloris Leachman, The Last Picture Show. Margaret Leighton, The Go-Between. And Margaret, Carnal Knowledge. Will you pass it to the girl in question, please?
The envelope, please.
Well, no, the statuette.
And the winning actress is Cloris Leachman.
Yes, you're right. She takes it and gives you the biggest kiss right on the mouth. That's quite disgusting.
Don't tell Marion.
The award-winning song of that year included The Age of Not Believing from Bedknobs and Broomsticks. All His Children, Sometimes a Great Notion. Bless the Beasts and Children. Life is What You Make It. And the theme from Shaft from the MGM film of the same name. Who are you passing it to now?
To Isaac Hayes for Theme from Shaft.
Isaac Hayes has grabbed it, given you a hug around the waist and kissed you as well.
Well, there you are. The
Well, you did very well.
Of 1971, yes, but I must tell you in fairness, I was there that year, so that helped a little. That was one of the 3 years I was there.
Well, you know, I should have recognized it because the part that I'm reading has a tearful Charles Chaplin accepting his special award.
That's the year I was
remember
there.
you were there and you told me about Mr. Chaplin.
I'm always
accepting it.
honest with you. I always level with you about these things. But from memory, from 20 years
It's
ago,
not bad.
I got about 4 out of 5 there, didn't I?
Did you speak to Charlie Chaplin at all?
Yes, I did. I met him at the Board of Governors Ball afterwards at the Beverly Wiltshire Hotel, and I said, Mr. Chaplin, who was in his early 80s then, in fact, he was so feeble, Bruce, he was being carried around on his elbows by minders.
Yeah.
And I said to him, Mr. Chaplin, isn't it about time you came to visit us in Australia? And he said, my dear fellow, I thought I was talking to Eric Pierce for a minute. He said, my dear fellow, I think I've left it a bit late for that.
Oh, well, it was lovely of him to say that, wasn't it?
And what did Walt Disney say to you when you tripped over him in Main Street, Disneyland, USA?
Hi, Bruce. I always love you and Phil on Nightline.
On 3AW, you're listening to Remember When for State Trustees.
Phil, that 16-inch turntable of yours. Spinning.
3AW presents the one and only Max Bygraves.
All of me.
One performance only. Max Bygraves in concert at the Concert Hall on Saturday, November 30th.
I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter.
Tickets are on sale now at all Bass outlets.
Standing on the corner, watching all the girls go by.
Don't miss the legendary Max Bygraves Saturday, November 30th at the Concert Hall. Another great concert performance from 1278 3AW.
Out of the furniture.
Why are you reading a used car classifieds? I thought you were going to buy a new car.
I am a new Ford Laser.
Why a Laser?
Well, Laser has the space and features I want, plus it's great value for money. And because it's been the best-selling small car in Australia for nearly a decade, it holds its resale value really well.
And the paper tells you that.
Sure, just look at the prices in these ads.
Truth in advertising, eh? That's a novelty.
The fighting in the Gulf War is finished, but for thousands of people in Jordan, Iraq and Iran, the suffering continues. They are displaced, homeless and malnourished. There is no end in sight. Care is there, but we desperately need help to continue providing food, water, shelter and medical aid. Care Australia delivers, but we need your support, your help. Please send your donation today to any branch of the Commonwealth Bank or to GPO Box 9977 in your capital city.
If you haven't heard Nightline lately, here's some of what you've been missing.
Just passing by, saw the lights on, thought I'd call in.
You're on Neil and, what's his name? John Hindle and Paul Barber a lot.
They're very good friends of mine.
Well, they try and get you, don't
they? Do, aren't they? And John, you never know where he's coming from.
Jeff, if Bruce and I were to take a break between Christmas and the New Year, how would you feel about doing Nightline with Joan Kerner?
Oh, be an absolute pleasure.
Nightline, Monday to Thursday nights on 1278 3AW.
As I was saying, Phil, that 16-inch turntable is spinning around your finger and you've got something black and round on it.
Remember song and dance man Dan Daly?
Oh, yes.
He's going to sing a song that my mother used to play on the piano, and Sunday nights would all stand around the piano in queue singing the song. And tap dancing we were too.
You were meant for me. I was meant for you. Nature patterned you, and when she was done, you were all the sweet things rolled up in one. You're like a plaintive melody that never sets me free. I'm content the angels must have sent you, and they meant you just for me. You're like a plaintive melody that never sets me free. I'm content the angels must have sent you, and they meant you just for me. They meant you just for me.
And Mum would play, would she?
Yes, my mother and my father were both pianists. Of course, they met at Allen's in the 1920s when Mum was Jack O'Hagan's secretary.
Yes.
But Mum was a fine pianist too, with songs like Ain't She Sweet and She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain, and that song, You Were Meant to Be.
So we're just the three of you, I suppose.
No, because I have two older sisters.
Oh, they'd be singing too.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a ritual after tea around the old Yamaha.
Yes, straight after Daddy and Paddy. It's wonder you didn't hear us at your place.
Oh, Well, we didn't live in the same suburb, and I mean, your mother's peddling and playing mustn't have been too loud.
Oh, it was wonderful
But
times.
lots of memories, eh?
Oh, yes. There's not enough of it these days, is there? Families getting together around a pianola or a piano roll and
Absolutely.
singing their hearts out.
Yes, they'd be a lot closer if they did.
And there's a great lack of communication around the dinner table, don't you think, in some families, because they're all glued to the television?
Yes, that's right. It's. Did you have a nice day? Shh. Oh, look what's on the box, you know.
Like, do you bring your family together every evening before you go to work for, like, a school assembly where you can all swap notes and discuss the day's events?
Well, it's a bit hard, you know, with a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old girl to say, now, listen, this is what you're going to do tonight. I want you in bed at 7:30. Plus, this, I'm in here with you.
Do you have a curfew hour at home for the children, or can they come and go as they please?
Oh, no, they know that it's wrong to be out after 12 or 1.
Yeah.
I mean, there are exceptions when there are birthday parties and that type of thing, but I generally wait up for them.
I don't like being out that late myself.
Well, I'm only out because I'm working with you. It's baby boomer time.
Oh, and into the ring comes Bruce for the first question in the red corner.
All right, here's the question. What was editor Perry White's favourite expletive in Superman?
He was known as the Chief, wasn't he?
Yeah.
What he was always calling out, Superman was always saying Great Scott, and what was Perry White was always screaming at
Do you
Jimmy
know?
Olsen and Lois Lane. No, I'll pass.
You don't know?
No.
Great Caesar's Ghost.
Oh, yes. No, I didn't know that, to be very fair.
Go ahead.
What Australian film was almost called Behind the News?
Repeat the question, please.
There's a clue there. What Australian film was almost called Behind the News?
News front.
That's the one.
Thank you.
Bruce leads 1-0.
Who slipped away somewhere near Salinas?
This is a song you're talking about
Who
now.
slipped away somewhere near Salinas?
Who was she now? She slipped away somewhere near...
Somewhere near Salinas.
I see you're into all this country and western stuff, and I'm not. Was it the Ebony Eyes?
No, I'm so sorry. It was Bobby McGee.
Oh, me and Bobby McGee.
That's right.
Fair
Somewhere
enough.
near Salinas.
That's all right. No, that's a good question.
Right.
Now, you should get this one because you're into the Oscars. What 1961 musical won 10 Academy Awards? I'll give you a clue. Natalie Wood starred.
Won 10 awards in 1971.
61.
61,
Yeah,
sorry.
a musical film.
That would be West Side Story.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yes, you're leading 2-0 at the moment.
And we're still continuing?
Yes, one more each, huh?
All right. Who played club president Ted Parker in the film The Club?
Graham Kennedy was in the film.
Is that your
the
answer?
Yes.
Well, it's not right.
No, I'm thinking aloud. No. Graham Kennedy was in the film.
Yes, you're
Frank
right.
Wilson
Is
was
that your
in the film.
answer?
I'll go with Frank Wilson.
No, it was Graham Kennedy.
You're being very mean tonight, Mr. Davey. Okay, this is my last question to you. What was a brick in pre-decimal currency? Now, this we're talking about a slang expression. What denomination was called, Bruce, a brick?
Oh, I'm trying to think what was a red-coloured note. Was it a 10-shilling note, I believe, or was it... a brick, 20 pounds, 10 pounds. Was it 10? I'll say 10 pounds.
And you'd be right
Thank
again.
you so much.
You've
Thank
done
you.
it again.
Have you seen the delightful Christmas gifts by Elizabeth Arden this year? They're just the loveliest beauty lines that any woman can have. You know, Elizabeth Arden goes to a great deal of care over her Christmas presentation sets. There's such a wide range, too, priced from just a few shillings. Ask your Elizabeth Arden retailer to show you the charming range of bluegrass or memoir cherie created by Elizabeth Arden.
There's nothing like the old-fashioned flavor of Granny Davis bread.
ice would be pulling the plug right now. Now, don't forget to dry well between the toes, Steve.
That's right, Steve, and a little bit of Amplex under the armpit.
Out with the Johnson's baby powder?
Yes. And a little sprinkle all over, I think, tonight.
Oh, a little dabble, do you?
Thanks for joining us in the bathtub, Steve. It's the only half hour of Remember When he ever listens to, but he enjoys it. Coming up after 7, we speak to Stan Rofe, Alex Hare, John Hindle, Guy Mitchell, hopefully, tube willing, and we'll have a feature at 9 o'clock, which you'll absolutely love. It's Inner Sanctum. Look forward to that.
You're on Remember When with Bruce Mansfield and Philip Brady. Now, 3AW National Network News.
14 degrees in Melbourne, fine tomorrow with a top of 19. It's 7 o'clock. Good evening, I'm Ron Burke. In this news, the Prime Minister says his leadership is safe as pressure from the Premiers on tax sharing increases. Prime Minister Hawke says any threats to his leadership from Paul Keating have been laid to rest. Speculation of another challenge for the Labor top job has been rife, with the former Treasurer making several attacks on Mr Hawke's policies. But Mr Keating has gone public and stated he doesn't intend to battle for the leadership. Mr Hawke has declared the challenge is dead.
It's going to be a great problem for you in the media. You don't want to think it's over, but it's over.
Opposition leader John Hewson says the Prime Minister's statement on jobs to Parliament this week is his last chance to get it right. Dr Hewson says Mr Hawke must create real long-term employment instead of just worrying about his own job. He says anybody can borrow money and create jobs. The hard part is to implement policies which can rebuild the private sector and make the country more competitive. Mr Hawke is expected to deliver his statement on Thursday. State leaders have stepped up pressure on the federal government to accept a formal Commonwealth state tax sharing proposal. South Australia's John Bannon says he's confident once the state's formal tax proposal has been properly explained, federal caucus will accept the plan. And Premier Kerner has indicated the states could torpedo the Prime Minister's new federalism process if its basis, income tax sharing, is knocked back. Speaking on Channel 9, Mrs Kerner has rejected claims federalism is just another way for the states to increase finances.
I think everybody's entitled to contribute to a debate, but not in a way that's associated with who's leading the argument. It seems to me, though, that in Australia we are now led by the Prime Minister, an historic opportunity to change the way we do things.
The ANZ Bank has launched a national campaign to win federal government support for tax concessions on savings accounts. More from Julie Flynn.
The ANZ says the strong preference for superannuation-based savings could lead to a big shift in savings from the banks to superannuation funds. It warns this could lead to higher interest rates for bank customers, including first-home buyers, farmers and business. The bank's calling for tax concession for the interest income on savings accounts, the introduction of long-term savings accounts, and for the opportunity for banks to compete for long-term savings through superannuation savings accounts. Julie Flynn, Canberra.
Overseas, Serb-led Yugoslav armed forces have pounded the Adriatic port of Dubrovnik from air, land and sea, while Croatian forces say they're on the brink of losing the town of Vukovar after an 11-week siege. As 4 months of fighting in Croatia show no signs of easing, Serbia and its allies on the state presidency have appealed to the United Nations to send peacekeeping troops to end the bloodshed. To sport, and South Africa has made 8 for 177 in its 47 overs in the limited over match against India in Calcutta. Victoria is 2 for 153. In its second innings at stumps on day 3 of its Sheffield Shield match against New South Wales at the SCG, forced to follow on 199 runs in arrears, Dean Jones is on 72 and night watchman Darren Berry 6. Meantime, at the Adelaide Oval, Tasmania is 5 for 314 at stumps in reply to South Australia's 414. Europe has won the Four Tours Golf Championship, defeating Australasia 8-4 in the final. Australian Open golf champion John Morse has scored a 3-stroke win in the New Zealand Open in Auckland. News time is 7:04. Now Melbourne's weather, fine and mostly sunny tomorrow with a light southerly wind, a top of 19 after an overnight low of 8. The outlook for Tuesday, a few showers, about 18. Wednesday, fining up about 18. And Thursday, some showers late in the day in the low 20s. On the bays, west to southwest wind of 10 to 15 knots, reaching 20 knots in the south at times tonight, waves of half to 1 metre. It's now 14 degrees in Melbourne. I'm Ron Burke, 1278 3AW. Back now to Remember When with Bruce and Philip.
Castrol Motor Oil, over a network of 69 stations throughout Australia, presents Leave It to the Girls with Terry Deer.
Let's leave it to the girls. Let's leave it to the girls. If you've a problem puzzling you and you don't know just what to do, ask Terry Deer to help you.
Night Beat.
Hi there. This is Randy Stone. I cover the Night Beat for the Daily. Stories start in many different ways. This one began on the main highway and ended at the foot of a cliff.
Night Beat, starring Hart McGuire as Randy Stone. Before we begin tonight's story, here's your announcer.
May we have your company for the next half hour or so. Start to smile as you check the time. It's the Cadbury Show.
Cadbury's makers of famous dairy milk chocolate bring you another edition of the Cadbury Show, broadcast on a network of 46 stations throughout Australia.
Take it from here. Don't go away when you can take it from here. Why don't you stay and maybe join in the fun? Now the show has begun.
Yes, Dick Bentley and Jimmy Edwards will be on hand for the next 30 minutes with June Whitfield, Wallace Heaton and the keynotes, all inviting you to...
This is Henry Simon, bringing you another story from my files here at the Missing Persons Bureau.
In these stories of the Missing Persons Bureau, dramatized for Henry Simon by Ross Napier, names and addresses have, for obvious reasons, been changed.
Quiz Kids on parade with your favorite show. Now's the time for answers to things you want to know.
Johnson & Johnson, makers of Johnson's Baby Powder, the famous Tech Toothbrush and Band-Aid adhesive bandages, welcome listeners on 57 stations throughout Australia
To the Quiz Kids Show.
that wonderful montage of some great radio themes and introductions, back to our second hour tonight of Remember When. Don't forget, if you'd like to stump us with a question on trivia, ring us on 329-7522.
Yes, and we do have some prizes to give away during the evening if we decide that the question was really worthwhile and it really caught us on the hop.
That's right. Just looking at this old TV week from 1960 that I found under the lino at home, Phil. Kicks to Charles Bush. He's so good at picking women to bits. Why not let a contestant pick at him? For a start, I'd like to get rid of that soup strainer on the top of his lip. It would be a change to see him in a suit instead of that same outfit he wears each week. You remember the show he did? It was not Lady for a Day, but it was a transformation show with Vicky Hammond.
Like a Beauty and the Beast type program?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I do remember.
They'd bring a lady in and he'd say, look, that twin set is woeful, take it off. That hairstyle should be on a man. Look at your legs, you've got to do something about that, and those pearls I would turf. And they'd send her off, and a week later she'd come up looking like a queen, you know?
I bet that letter's from a lady, isn't it? It has to be, huh?
It's just got critic underneath it.
Yeah.
But that's from Kicks and Kisses of the 1960 TV week.
Who's on the cover?
Lucy and Desi.
All right.
And the question, even in 1960, is their marriage finished?
Even on the rocks then, huh?
Yes.
That's showbiz for you.
Up here that way. Up shortly, Melbourne's own rocky jockey, Stan the Man, who for decades enthralled teenagers in the city. And I should know because I was one of them and very close to Stan in those days, as I was his turntable operator on the Platter Parade.
Should be a certain highlight on Remember When tonight, talking to Stan the Man.
Hello there. Have you made a will yet? If you haven't, take a moment or two to listen to this.
I guess we never really thought about, making a will or anything. Then Dad passed away. And suddenly it hit me that, we needed to plan for the future. I always thought Dad would be around forever. Anyway, we went to state trustees to make our wills. After all, they made sure that Dad's last wishes were seen to.
Making a will is the only way to ensure that when you die, your assets will be distributed according to your wishes. State trustees' caring staff have the experience to give you professional advice in preparing your will according to your wishes. So, if you don't have a will, then telephone State Trustees today on 667-6444. State Trustees, the experts in personal financial administration.
Drive with Paul Barber and John Hindle.
Are you much happier that John Hewson's selling it as leader of the opposition than you might have been as leader of the opposition?
What do you think I'm going to say to that, Paul?
Well, I don't know.
Do you think I came down in that last shower of rain here?
Come on, be honest. Tell us what you really think.
No.
On tomorrow's programme, all the news and your views. After 6, you can hear regulars including Melbourne's liveliest TV critic, Jim Shembry, Trish Caswell from the Trades Hall Council, and eminent psychologist Tim Watson-Munro takes your calls. Drive with Paul Barber and John Hindle from 4 weekdays on 1278. 3AW.
Well, in Australia and Melbourne, we have a plethora of teenage rock and roll stations. What have you got? Fox FM, Double T,
Triple M,
Triple J. But in the old days, I'm going back to the late 50s, early 60s, when I joined 3KZ, there was virtually only one program where teenagers could listen to their favourite stars from overseas on record, and that was Platter Parade, and the man who brought us that every night and all day Sundays, I remember, Stan the Man, Stan Rofe. Hello, Stan.
Hello, how are you?
What about a hello as we used to hear it?
Well, I'll try. I just worked 3 very late nights, and I'm relaxing on this Sunday with a tinny.
Right.
But I'll try it. Hello! Hi, Victoria. It's Stan the Man, your old rocky jockey.
Oh, that is wonderful.
And of course, people who have access to your private phone number also get greeted the same way, I note, Stan.
I have an answering service which it goes just that way, but well, you know, I'm one of these people that like to let everyone know my telephone number so that everyone can hear Stan the Man as he used to be. It might get me a job again. Who knows?
Yes, it could. Where did it all start for you, Stan?
Well, it started back really when I was quite a baby. Going to school in my very early days, I used to practice radio. I used to love KZ. Norman Banks was always my favourite announcer. And I used to take Mum's pots to bed with me and throw a blanket over the head. And because pots reverberate the echo of one's voice, I'd play radio announcers.
Well, believe it or not, I did the same thing, Stan, not with your mother's pots, but my mother's.
Yeah, you're talking about pots you're cooking, aren't you?
Oh, yes, of course. So, from there, your love of radio continued?
Well, it did, yes, and I was lucky enough to meet a man called Bill Roberts. You remember Bill Roberts, radio school?
Yes.
I lasted there 2 weeks, and I finally was sent to 7AD in Devonport, Tasmania, where I lasted all of 3 months, then came back to 3AK. Then I spent two and a half months at 3AK doing midnight to dawn programs only, because in those days there was only one midnight to dawn radio station, that was 3AK.
Right.
As you may remember, all the other radio stations had the good sense to open at 6 in the morning and close at midnight.
Yes.
But 3AK, there was a technician at 3AK. His name was Arthur. He's passed on now. Arthur, and it was a funny old studio at 3AK, the old Mac Furnishing Company. But if you wanted an increase in money, the man that ran the Mac Furnishing Company, he was very, very religious, and if you wanted an increase, you'd go to him and say, "Please, sir, may I have another £1 a week?" And he'd tell you he'd pray for you overnight and ask God if you were worth it.
Now, Stan, are we talking about the old studios in Grey Street, St Kilda, where Lou Carr used to do breakfast?
That's right, yes, you are.
On top of a bank building, I recall.
That's right, mate, yes. And, of course, the 3AK studio, well, you could open a window at least, you know, it had curtains around it. That was the only soundproofing material we had in those days. And, I mean, if you barked outside the window, you'd have every dog in the shop in Ackland Street, St Kilda, bark back. And Arthur used to yap at them while you were on the air. And every bloody dog in the neighbourhood would yap back. You couldn't hear yourself in the air.
Lovely. And where from after 3AK, Stan?
Well, I didn't stay there long enough, you know. I wasn't granted the £1 extra. So, according to the man that ran the Make Furnishing Company, God really wasn't on my side. So I moved on then very quickly to 3XY. Same year, by the way, 53. So I went to 3 radio stations in 1 year. And I got to 3XY and I found a little brat called Bert Newton. And I was doing the afternoon program there at 3XY when I first went there. And I used to do the Peter's Pals afternoon program as well. Then I'd finish at 6 o'clock and we go to the night program with Hal Todd, I think, Rory Barley and Clive Waters in those days. And Bert used to do his little bit there too. He was running around the place. In fact, I don't know what Bert ever did in the place. I find it very hard to remember. But I do know doing Peter's Pals in the afternoon. It was only a half-hour program. And Bert did come into me one day and he said, "Would you mind if I read the commercials? Peter's ice cream commercials." And I said, "Well, go ahead and do it." You know, and he did. And eventually, I thought he's doing so well, I'll leave it to Bert, and I'll go down to the Imperial pub and join the boys and have a beer. So that's the way Bert got started there with a full-time radio program at 3XY. And I was so good, of course, they promoted me by 1954 to nighttime radio. I don't know whether I was good or bad. But I got there with Hal Tyler, he was my co-night announcer, and Clive Waters, the late Clive Waters, who went to 3UZ as news director, and Roddy Marley, who came from 3UZ to join 3XY.
About that time, and you were on top of the Princess Theatre at the Quality Station, Stan, I think Tom Jones would have been scouting around.
Yeah, well, he was scouting around. I recall 3XY as being more like a butcher shop than a radio station. The Quality Radio, I always thought of Quality Meats.
Were you Stan the Man by this time?
No, I hadn't progressed that far, by 1954. Bert became our nighttime panel op, by the way, and he used to play all the serials and also spin all the records for us. And but we could never find Bert because we were in the Princess Theatre, and at that time Kismet was playing with Hayes Gordon. And we used to find the part of XY that led to the Princess Theatre upstairs overlooked the women's dressing rooms, or the dressing rooms for the whole cast. And we would find that in between serials, I'd say, Hal, we've got a commercial coming up, where's Bert? And he'd say, I don't know, he's probably perving on the girls. And we'd go and have a look, and sure enough, there was Bert leaning over the balcony looking at all the girls getting undressed in costume.
Oh, we always loved show business.
Bert loved show business, did he ever? By the way, he was quite hilarious on the program you two boys run. I listened to Bert that night, and there was just so much truth in what he said about the old days. I got quite embarrassed about it all.
Stan, your golden days really began at 3KZ, and that was my first full-time job as a panel operator with Platter Parade, on Platter Parade. I did the night shift, started at 5 when you started, and continued till close of transmission at 11:30. But in that time, you were as big as any local or international pop star, because yours was the link that teenagers of that time had with the big stars from overseas.
Well, that's true, Bruce. I joined KZ in 1955, and I left them in 1965, so I had 10 years there. So there were 10 great years and 10 very funny years, too. Very funny years. But yeah, it's true that teenagers could relate to one person because rock and roll was so new. And no one really knew who Roy Orbison was, and no one really knew who Elvis Presley really was. And all these stars and all these acts were quite new to teenagers. And their link with the record artist you were playing on record and the man that played the records, fell strongly in your court because you were the man that sold rock and roll. So therefore you became bigger really than the stars on the records you played. And consequently you became the hero of all these teenagers. And I found myself time and time again almost locked out of 3KZ because there were so many kids fighting to get in the studio doors that you'd have to fight your way through the kids with the aid of policewomen to get to work. You know, they had policewomen on the stairs at KZ to keep them away from Stan the Man.
But you know, Stan, you not only in those days, when I saw you at work, you not only played the records, but you launched a lot of careers in this city that I should think right now should be spoken of. People like Normie Rowe, Johnny Chester, just to name a couple, probably wouldn't be where they are today without the influence and the start that you gave them.
Well, that's very nice of you to say so, mate, but I just realised that Sydney was well ahead of us, so they had the Johnny O'Keefes, they had the Cole Joys, they had the Lonnie Lees, and the Digby Richards and people like that. And here in Melbourne, we virtually had nobody. So it was up to someone to do something about it, and being the only DJ in the town, really, it was left to Stan the Man. And so I went out and I started comparing dancers right throughout Melbourne. I had a Volkswagen 1200, HPY 237. The kids used to call it Herbie. So we had Herbie, and Herbie used to carry me from one dance hall to another one. So eventually I did uncover the Johnny Chesters and also the Thunderbirds and the Betty McRaes and the Bobby Cooksons and the Colin Cooks, and so it went on and on and on. And I was able to work out record contracts with record companies for all these people. I used to select the material that they recorded, and I used to play the records till those records became hit records on the charts.
Stan, you're talking about 1955. The quality of Australian recordings left a lot to be desired in those days, didn't it, production-wise?
Well, in those days, we only had one-track machines, you know. It was all done in one take, and if you couldn't do it in one take, you had to do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And so, you know, we only had the one track to play around with. Sydney was no better. I mean, the early Johnny O'Keefe and Cold Joy and Lonnie Lee records weren't any better than the early W&G and Astor records. And I think the quality matched the performances. But I found it very, very difficult to get Melbourne artists recognised in Sydney, and yet these Sydney artists were being recognised down here, and the young people were going out and buying their records. And I thought, well, right about time I stopped playing Sydney records until Sydney DJs gave the Melbourne rock and roll stars a fair go. So I declared war on Sydney radio, and I stopped playing all records out of Sydney for 1.5 years, which created quite a furor. And you can imagine the ironic cheers I'd get from some of the people in Sydney when I appeared up there on some of the big shows.
Oof.
Oh, it was terrible, terrifying.
Well, did you prove the point, Stan?
I did prove the point, yes. What made me change my mind, and it was really Johnny O'Keefe was the one man that really made me change my mind, because Johnny O'Keefe himself, although he was getting airplay in Sydney, wasn't quite as popular really as Cold Joy was. And the Sydney DJs were intent on making Cold Joy the #1 man in Australia. And I became intent on making Johnny O'Keefe the #1 man. So eventually, Johnny O'Keefe had to come to Melbourne to really find the fame he ultimately found, and became the king of rock and roll in his country, and also the father of rock and roll, the founding father of rock and roll, as I would say, Australia-wide.
Stan, in those days, in the late 50s, when you were doing Platter Parade on 3KZ, did you have a tie-up with Lee Gordon, the promoter, so that you had access to interviews with people like Frank Sinatra, Louis Armstrong, and Nat King Cole?
That was easy, yes, yeah. Lee Gordon, of course, was never, as we all know, a well man. I don't think many people realise that he had brain surgery in Honolulu. And he was a man that had a form of Alzheimer's disease, and he had a bad memory, and he couldn't really remember he could remember the far distant past, but he couldn't tell you what happened yesterday or a week before. And his right-hand man was a man called Alan Heffernan. Alan is still alive with a very lovely lady and family living in Sydney. And Alan was a great man, a lovely man, and he was a man that really was behind the throne of Lee Gordon. And it was Alan that always got you interviews with the stars. And of course, if you had the ratings and the score on the board, naturally Alan would come to you. And he always came to me in Melbourne. And anytime he had stars flying in from overseas, when they got to Melbourne, they always appeared with Stan the Man first. It was just a must with Alan. So we had a good rapport and a good relationship. Consequently, I got all the scoops.
You were the only one doing that type of radio, Stan, as I recall. I remember 5 o'clock, that 5 o'clock time slot was, I think, occupied by the Tailwaggers Club on UZ, and I think it was the Friendly Door on DB. There was no one touching that market.
Well, Bruce, by 1960, we were starting on air at 3:30 in the afternoon, you may remember.
Yes.
We were going through from 3:30 till 7 o'clock, but what used to bug me working at KZ was not so much the fact that I enjoyed and loved doing the job. It's just the fact that the radio station would make you go right through the day and finish the night at 11:30, where you had to read hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hang on. Is that better?
Yep.
Right, we're better. So you had to read news bulletins, which went 10 minutes, and do all the other programs, Darrod, Styles Store on the Heart of Burke Street, whatever, and so it went on and on and on. And it used to be a hard day to get through. You'd be there at 10 in the morning preparing for your program in the afternoon, and in the afternoon preparing for the program at the local pub. And so you'd run over the road and start at 3:30. But I said to Johnny O'Keefe once, and Johnny said, "You shouldn't be doing news and all that other rubbish on the radio station." I said, "Johnny, I don't know how to get out of it." I said, they employ me to do it. I said, he said, "Do you realise that you have everybody in Melbourne in your right hand?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, have you ever seen a survey book?" And I said, no one's shown me one." And Johnny O'Keefe said, "My God," he said, "you are naive, aren't you?" And he said, "Well, look, if you want to get out of it," he said, "all you have to do is start mucking up every other thing you do on the radio station but the program you do best. That's rock and roll." So he said, "Start with the news service at 7 o'clock, he said, and completely, he said, balls it up. He said, and he said, if you do it often enough, he said, they'll take you off it."
We're talking to Stan Rofe on Remember When Tonight, but surely, Stan, you had some competition further up the road at 45 Burke Street. Didn't 3UZ throw up heavyweights like Alan Lappin, Don Lund, Jeff Haynes the Hound, and Brian Taylor against you?
Yes, they came against me one after the other at 3UZ, but we kept beating them all the time, mate. And we got to the stage where at one stage, 3UZ even had John Laws on landline to try and take that vital time spot. And not even John Laws could do it. So in the long run, I won. But of course, it was rather sad to think that KZ gave away rock and roll in 1965 when they did rate nearly number one in breakfast with Ron Cady and certainly number one in the afternoon with Stan the Man.
I remember the lineup so well in those days. There was Norman Swain, 9 to 12. Jim Archer, I Bring a Love Song from 12:30 to 1:30. Kevin O'Gorman's Big Sound from 2 till 4. Under His Wings with John Best.
Penny Serenade was John Best.
Penny Serenade, Under His Wings. And then at 4:30, there was Norman Swain and Cousin Benny.
Cousin Benny, yeah. And weren't they great?
Oh, what a great...
So mid-60s, when KZ changed format, you find yourself out on a limb, Stan?
Well, Eddie Barmer, who was virtually told he was leaving, whether he liked it or not, the general manager of KZ, I must say, I think I gave poor old Eddie a few grey hairs in those days, but I kept disappearing north until I got more money. I'd get on a plane and take off, and they'd have to find out where I was in Australia. And then I'd bargain with them to come back to work. But yes, that's the way things went in those days, and I eventually got more money than the people that worked for Val Morgan and Sons and all the people that worked at KZ. I eventually got more money per week than any of them. But I mean, that certainly did me no good when Eddie Barmer came to me and said, Stan, I think I would get out if I were you and go elsewhere. And I said, why? He said, they're about to chop rock and roll. He said, I am leaving. And so that surprised me, of course. I'm leaving, and he said there's a new manager coming in. So ultimately, yes, I had to get out. And I resigned. I walked out, in fact. We had many arguments, the new manager and myself. We had many arguments, and I just walked out, and I thought, well, I may go to London to join an old colleague of mine, Alan Freeman, who was working at the BBC. And Alan had already told me that if I went to London, I shouldn't have any trouble at all getting a job with the BBC. He said, but you may have to work perhaps at Radio Luxembourg for a while. He said, but you can board with me. So I had my mind quite content on going to London. And like 1965, as far as I was concerned, was the end of Stan the Man in Melbourne. But of course, Lewis Bennett, the late Lewis Bennett of 3UZ, had other ideas. And Lewis actually called me the day after I resigned from KZ, or walked out on KZ. And he said, I want you to come and see me. He said, if you go near any other radio station before you see us at 3UZ and see me, he said, don't bother coming in the front door. So I explained to Lewis Bennett at 3UZ in those days, at 1965, that Stan the Man was going to live on elsewhere, perhaps in the UK. He thought that was a silly idea and said so to me, but he said, we would like to have Stan the Man. He said, now we have a chance. He said, tell me, he said, what makes you want to go to the UK? So I told him all the reasons why. I said I'd had a good 10-year run in Melbourne with 3KZ. And he said, well, look, he said, if we pay your fare there and back, he said, would you do me the favour of joining 3UZ for 1 year? And he quoted me an amount of money weekly, which was something like 3 times in excess of anything KZ had ever paid me. And he said, all I want to do is see you walking around the place and here every day. He said, you don't have to go on air. He said, stay here for a year, he said, and I will pay your plane fare there and back. Of course, that was a wise move for Lewis Bennett in those days to get rid of Stan the Man anyway. But then Alan Lappin, you may remember Lap, he became very, very sick, and they asked me if I'd go on the air and fill in for Lappin, and I said yes, I would. And of course, I stayed there for 7 years.
Yes, well, that's just about almost brought us up to present time, apart from a little while at 3DB.
Well, a little while at 3DB. I spent some nice years at 3UZ. We helped Johnny Farnham on his way, and then I can take, to a certain degree, I can take some of the credit for Johnny Farnham's career, as I can for Axiom, Twilights, Groove, and Twilights. I said Twilights, and also a group that came from Brisbane with Glenn Wheatley in it called Blue City Union. So we had a lot to do with rock and roll at 3UZ, as you can imagine. Johnny Young, too. I played Johnny Young's record for the first DJ in Australia, well, at least in Melbourne, to play Johnny Young. So I dare say somewhere along the line I gave Johnny Young a start as well. So we were sort of making hits for artists all the way down the line. to 1971 when I left 3UZ. I then went to 3XY. I went to 3XY as assistant program director, music director, and on-air morning personality, working between 9 and 12 noon. And there I stayed for, as I say, till around about 7 years. When they had totally new management, and of course I didn't see eye to eye with what was happening to 3XY, even though they were riding at the crest of a wave. They were number one, and even though they were number one, I chose to get out and go to 3DB. And I'm rather glad I did. In hindsight, some people would say that's a silly thing to do, resign from a number one station and go to a station down the bottom of the ladder. But I did that, and I'm not sorry I did. I thoroughly enjoyed my time at 3DB. Certainly it was very old-fashioned. It wasn't rating very well, and I took the reins there, and we managed to pull the old radio station around so that even though it never rated number one, its ratings weren't all that bad. And of course, 3DB very quickly became Double T. And when it became Double T, that's when I resigned and got out and decided that I'd rather work for myself and retire from full-time broadcasting.
Stan, you've given us a real treat tonight. You've reminisced from the very early days. You've unfurled a wonderful story, but I'm just going to bring back a few pleasant memories, or not so pleasant perhaps, from the old Trades Hall, where one of the jobs that you were asked to do, along with myself and all the other announcers, was to do the Val Morgan ads in that big auditorium there in the Trades Hall. Have a listen to this, Stan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jim Archer. And Stan Rofe of 3KZ bringing you the following announcements on behalf of Val Morgan & Sons. Keep the cold outside. A full range of winter heating appliances, electric radiators, kerosene heaters, and Wonder Heat is available from Kids Hardware Store, your leading hardware dealers. For that extra special hairstyle, make your appointment with Goebel's Modern Hairdressing Salon. Specialist in permanent waving, trim, sets, and razor cuts. All done to your individual...
You would have loathed doing that, Stan.
I used to hate it. You know, we got 2 and 6.
I got 2 shillings a theatre.
Well, I got 2 and 6. I was lucky. I got 50 cents. When I became a DJ at 3KZ, a disc jockey, good old disc jockey, they threw me off and said they couldn't understand a word I was saying.
Stan, were you ever subject...
I couldn't.
Were you ever subject to bribery and corruption in the form of payola?
Payola did exist, yes, it did. Yep. There's no doubt about that. It did exist. It was in the business. I'm very pleased to say that I did not accept payola. I never did. Never accepted 1 cent for playing a record, nor promoting any show whatsoever either. But I will not name the disc jockeys in this city that received payola, as I think that would be incorrect. And well, I'll put it this way: when one reflects on the past, it's not a nice thing to drag names that were well known in this town through the mud. And I certainly don't intend doing that. But yes, payola did exist. Possibly towards the end of the 60s, it did exist more in the form of the number of records given by record companies to get airplay from various DJs at 3UZ. So it was quite natural to see some DJs getting upwards of 100 to 200 new albums per week. And running off down to sell them at record bars for about half the price record bars would normally pay for them.
Yes. Stan, we have to wrap this up, but I'd like to speak to you all night. It's just so much part of Melbourne, your life story in Melbourne radio. But I'd like you to turn back the hands of time. It's 7 o'clock. 5 of us are around that RCA Victor microphone in Studio 1 at 3KZ. And we'd always say, we'll see you outside.
Where?
Outside Ahoyt Suburban Theatre.
Yeah.
Stan, thanks for being our special guest on Remember When.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Stan Rofe.
Both of you, continued good luck.
Thank you, Stan.
Right, thank you.
Your clothesline may look like the place to freshen and dry your clothes. But watch out for summer breezes that blow pollens, wattles and dust right onto your sheets and pillowcases. Arm & Hammer dryer sheets may help beat summer wheezes and sneezes. With Arm & Hammer dryer sheets in your clothes dryer, you'll help keep those sneezes away. With Arm & Hammer dryer sheets, your clothes will smell like a summer breeze without the sneeze. Available from Safeway, Coles and selected Tucker Bag supermarkets.
The big guns are coming to Royal Melbourne. Greg Norman leading the charge. British Open champ Ian Baker Finch, Roger Davis, Ben Crenshaw, Robert Gay-Mez, John Morse. See golf's international stars and Australia's best in the 1991 Australian Open. 4 unforgettable days from November 28th to December 1. Tickets are on sale now through Bass with free entry to the Pro-Am Tuesday the 26th. Come and see the big guns fire at Royal Melbourne in the 1991 Australian Open.
Afternoons with Margaret Fletcher.
The week ahead is indeed the week of the stars. Introducing TV star John Yost, hairdresser John Elliott, funny man Col Elliott, best-selling author Robert Ludlam, and some men of music, Eric Bogle, Ignatius Jones, Gene Pitney and Cliff Richard. Do stay tuned.
Margaret Fletcher, 12:30 till 4, weekdays on 1278 3AW.
This is Remember When. It's 22 to 8. It's still 14 degrees in town. And we have our special guest, Alex Hare, joining us in just a moment with some of his radio highlights from the past, some segments that he's prepared for you that I know you're going to enjoy.
I'll tell you what I thoroughly enjoyed, Phil, and I hope you did, and the listeners too, speaking to and reminiscing with Stan Rofe. He put it so succinctly, those magic or perhaps hard days in the 60s, what Melbourne radio and the transformation of music and stars on record, what they went through. A terrific story.
Yes, and I was impressed that Stan was still in fine voice. I thought better than ever, Bruce, and he really deserves to be still up front, in my opinion.
Indeed he is. Let's now introduce our special guest this half hour with some terrific Melbourne radio nostalgia, Alex Hare.
Again, this is Hans McCurdy inviting you to relax with me.
Well, Alex, welcome to Remember When, your second visit with us with some wonderful nostalgia from Melbourne radio.
Thanks indeed, Bruce. Good evening to you, Philip.
Hi, Alex. Nice to see you again. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Arch McCurdy, Relax With Me, 3LO, for many, many years, opening our program. And that little piece of music there, which we use as a theme tonight, is called Pink Fizz. And if you went to the cinema back in the 40s and 50s, you would have perhaps remembered that from the Spotting the News section in a Cine Sound Review newsreel. A marvellous piece of bright music there. Speaking of theatres and newsreels and the like, I thought tonight we'd have a little bit of, advertising recordings that I found whilst digging around in my archives. And the first one is an acetate disc used at the new Malvern cinema on the corner of Glenferrie and Dandenong Roads. It's for Riley Feature Advertising, and it's by Hal Todd.
Presenting Riley Feature Advertising. A.F. Allway & Sons will expertly handle all types of real estate business on your behalf. A.F. Allway, opposite the Malvern station. Let Medicine Motors specially trained staff service or repair your Holden. Medicine Motors, opposite the Malvern tram depot. Have your gift of flowers delivered to any part of the world through your Interflora agents, Seebeck's Malvern Florists. Phone UY 4897 all hours. Quick dry rotary clothes hoists come in 5 standard sizes, special quotes and application. Phone Quick Dry UL 6220. Wanting to sell that used car? See Burkell Car Sales for the best deal, High Street near the Malvern Town Hall. You're sure to find the ideal gift at Radford's. They have a special range of perfect gifts ideas. Radford's for Better Gifts, 3 Station Street, phone UY 3945. SP Radio, authorized distributors of the popular Malley washing machine, invite you to call for a demonstration with pleasure. Separates are the thing this season. See the smart collection in fashion's favorite colors at Fields Frock Salon. The advertisers thank you for your attention.
Alex, you might like to just make reference to younger listeners why the phone numbers were YB or MX.
That's right. In those days, the numbers were on the dials, and I believe actually that they are coming back. So that for number 1 was ABC and so on down the dial, and you used to dial MU or MY or whatever, and it was rather interesting. That recording actually was for the week commencing August 20th, 1954, with Hal Todd Advertising at Hoyt's, New Malvern. Now some singing commercials. A medley here with a story of eggs, jelly and gin. Bob Horsfall is singing on 2 of them, and interesting to note that 2 of the ads from the 50s were written by Jack O'Hagan.
I like an egg for my breakfast.
One's not enough for me.
Well, how many eggs do you like then?
2 pet or maybe 3.
How do you like your eggs cooked, Mr. Poached or boiled or fried?
Why, any old way you cook them, sister, leaves me completely satisfied.
And what about eggs for your dinner?
That's quite okay with me. Eggs are the ideal food, dear.
Oh, that's very plain to see.
Eggs are full of vitamins, health and energy.
And so economical too.
So once we're agreed every day that we need at least 1 little egg, it's true. For eggs are really good for you.
seems upside down and you're feeling low, you can easily lose that frown and set your heart aglow. All you really need to do is have a little drink or two of Gilby's gin. It's good for you. But don't say gin, say Gilby. It will brighten up the day, drive your troubles all away, put you in a mood so gay. But don't say gin, say Gilby. Gin is really good for you. Sit there at your leisure. Serve it just to suit the taste. It's bound to meet with pleasure. In a cocktail, it's just fine. A gin and tonic, that's divine. Whichever way you take it, it's on the line. But don't say gin, say Gilby.
Yes, wonderful to hear on Remember When on 3AW. Eggs with Bob Horsfall and a very young 5-year-old Joy Wrigglesworth and the 2KY Orchestra singing the Aeroplane Jelly song. And then, of course, Bob Horsfall wrapping it up again with the Gilbey's Gin ad. And the first and last items there, written by the late Jack O'Hagan. Well, this next piece is a rather interesting one. In the days when television stations didn't go 24 hours, they came on the air at varying times. ATV Channel O came on air at around about 11 a.m. on a week morning.
Yes.
And the first program, well, you'd know that, wouldn't you?
Yes.
The first program was a daily magazine-type program which featured Roy Hampson and Katrina Pai. It was called Time for a Chit-Chat. Let's listen now to this tape, which features Keith Linden, the booth announcer at the time, coming on air on the 18th of August, 1967.
Good morning, everyone. This is Keith Linden on behalf of Melbourne Television, ATV Channel O, welcoming you to our transmission for today, Friday, the 18th of August, 1967. Time for a chit-chat with Roy Hampson and Katrina Pai.
Good morning to you.
Well, Keith Linden used to do a program called Movies for Married Men and also Detective Yarns in a big wingback chair.
That's right.
He had a mo. Remember him, Phil?
Yes, I was just talking to Alex about him just then. I wonder if he is related to the ABC announcer Graham Linden.
Oh, yes, I don't believe so. This is Remember When on 3AW. Alex Hare, not a rock, but a radio historian, is with us.
Thank you, Bruce. Well, Christmas is almost upon us, and in 1954, if you were in the Hoyt's New Malvern cinema, you would have heard John Masters giving us a description of what was coming up for the Christmas season. And, of course, Christmas time was a very good time to go to the cinema. So let's listen to John Masters and what was on in Christmas 1954.
On behalf of the management and staff, I'd like to wish each and everyone the very best for Christmas and the coming year. And I want also to tell you of the wonderful movie entertainment we have for you over this period. Very rarely have we had the pleasure of presenting week after week such wonderful attractions as we'll be presenting for this festive... To commence with, here is a brave and vital story of primitive passions unleashed in the story of Jeddah. This magnificent production in glorious color pictures the secret heart of Australia. And then fabulously beautiful, savagely real, excitingly different. Walt Disney, master of his work, unfolds the ancient drama of the struggle for existence, revealing secrets of nature few have ever witnessed. A new world of entertainment in the Academy Award winner, The Living Desert, brought to life in wonderful Technicolor. A suspense drama now from the famous pen of Alfred Hitchcock, Dial M for Murder. This film calls for and gets the services of three of Hollywood's finest artists, Ray Milland, Grace Kelly, Robert Cummings. And lastly, that dazzling heatwave girl, Dorothy Dandridge, in the title role of Carmen Jones. Set to the wonderful music of Bizet's Carmen, this movie is in CinemaScope and Technicolor. No wonder we say, the place to go for that festive show is the Hoyt Suburban Theatre.
Yes, he was very prim and proper.
Oh, yes.
CinemaScope.
Yes.
All of that. But, of course, had wonderful radio training and was a great personality here at 3AW Radio Melbourne. Well, the next piece I have for you is actually a portion of the soundtrack from the special edition Cinesound review of 3rd of February 1954, and it was issued to commemorate the 1954 Royal Tour by Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth and the Duke of Windsor. I'm sure you'll get a kick out of hearing this.
February the 3rd, 1954, a great day in the history of the Australian people, for their Queen has come among them, as the Royal Yacht Gothic, surrounded by small craft, proceeds majestically up the harbour from the heads. The distant roar of cheering rolls in from crowds on the harbour foreshores. This is a real Australian welcome to a beloved Queen and her husband. small barge travels down a colorful laneway formed by 600 yachts, cruisers, and other small craft moored with naval precision and gaily dressed with bunting. The magnificent spectacle stirs the people tremendously, even though every mind and every eye, for that matter, is on the tiny figure who is the center of it all. Her Majesty and His Royal Highness are received on the landing stage by the Governor-General, Sir William Slim, the State Governor, the Prime Minister, and the Premier. After inspection of the Naval Royal Guard, Her Majesty and His Royal Highness proceed to the dais where the Lord Mayor of Sydney welcomes her on behalf of the city. In her gracious reply, Her Majesty says,
My Lord Mayor, I thank you and your aldermen most sincerely for the welcome you have given me and my husband on behalf of the citizens of Sydney. I have always looked forward to my first visit to this country, but now there is the added satisfaction for me that I am able to meet my Australian people as their Queen. I am proud indeed to be at the head of a nation that has achieved so much. Standing at last on Australian soil, on this spot that is the birthplace of the nation, I want to tell you all how happy I am to be amongst you and how much I look forward to my journey through Australia.
Well, there, I must apologise too for teaming up Her Royal Highness with the Duke of Windsor. It was actually, of course, the Duke of Edinburgh.
But you know, Alex and Phil, in those days we hung on every word the Queen said. We would all listen to every word, of much importance when she spoke.
Oh, yes, and when she came to Melbourne, if you were far back in the crowd, you'd have your periscope in those days, wouldn't you, so you could see something.
That's right. I stood on a Purcell box in High Street, Northcote, and waited for her to go past, and also the back of a train, I remember, somewhere out in the country.
Yes, that'd be right.
That Purcell box took a punishing, didn't it, with Bruce standing on it everywhere. We're about to go into our last segment before the news, which is upcoming at 8 o'clock, and it's a special edition of Leo is on the Air, which was an MGM program, transcription program, which was issued to radio stations. This particular one was a special in that it commemorated the launch of The Wizard of Oz, and it was also issued to celebrate the Golden Jubilee of motion pictures. So we've edited down this wonderful recording, Leo is on the Air.
Leo is on the air. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer joins the world in celebrating the Golden Jubilee of motion pictures and climaxes a half-century of entertainment progress by announcing the early exhibition of its miracle in celluloid, the Technicolor extravaganza, The Wizard of Oz. So great was The Wizard as a book that more than 10 million copies reached eager hands and eager hearts. So entrancing was The Wizard as a musical attraction that Broadway held it for 4 solid years, after which it toured 941 American cities for even more record-breaking years. But it is as a motion picture that The Wizard of Oz reaches the full brilliance of its glory. Its colorful beauty and the sheer warmth of its simple story are matched only by the fineness of its unforgettable music. This preview of its delightful and long-anticipated score begins with Judy Garland's mellow voicing of Over the Rainbow.
Way over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the
wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, the birds fly over the rainbow whining. Oh, why can't I?
Oh, we're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. We hear he is the whiz of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever a whiz there was, the Wizard of Oz was one because of the wonderful things he does. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
The magnificent musical spectacle which highlights the new entertainment season. That's The Wizard of Oz, a glorious extravaganza painted with a rainbow of Technicolor. With a cast of thousands at a cost of millions, it is brought to you by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, makers of the great Ziegfeld and Broadway Melody, and presented as a greater attraction than even those two pace-setting entertainments. From border to border and coast to coast, they're calling The Wizard of Oz the sensation of the year. This is your MGM radio reporter signing off, thanking you for listening and hoping you will enjoy The Wizard of Oz when it comes your way.
Well, what can we say, Alex? But thank you so much for coming in with your local radio for us tonight.
My pleasure, Bruce and Phil. Anytime you want me.
Well, we look forward to it. When you get your collection, certainly give us a bell.
Very entertaining, Alex, as always, and thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Alex Hare.
On 3AW, you're on Remember When with Bruce Mansfield and Philip Brady. Now, 3AW National Network News.
Degrees in Melbourne, fine tomorrow with a top of 19. It's 8 o'clock. Good evening, I'm Ron Burke. In this news, the opposition promises tough new anti-union laws, and a key Paul Keating backer says his leadership challenges are over. State Opposition Leader Jeff Kennett says tough industrial legislation planned by the coalition would have prevented the shutdown this week of the Camperdown meatworks. Mr Kennett says on winning government he plans to introduce vital industries legislation which will provide for the arrest and prosecution of people who stop workers crossing picket lines. The Liberal leader says the bill is the coalition's answer to Meatworkers Union leader Wally Curran.
We are saying to Mr Curran, enough is enough, that we want people who want to work to have the opportunity to work. We want to earn export dollars for the meat that we sell overseas. And thirdly, we want our farmers to be able to get a return on their hard work.
ALP numbers man Graham Richardson plans to publish a letter in newspapers tomorrow, making it clear Paul Keating will not challenge again for the federal leadership. Prime Minister Hawke says he's convinced the former Treasurer's leadership challenge is finished. Mr Keating has repeated his pledge not to challenge Mr Hawke again after a week of battling within the party over his latest criticism of the Prime Minister's policies. Meanwhile, Opposition Leader John Hewson says the PM's statement on jobs to Parliament this week is his last chance to get it right. More from Julie Flynn.
Dr Hewson says Mr Hawke must create real long-term employment instead of just worrying about his own job. He says anybody can borrow money and create jobs. The hard part is to implement policies which can rebuild the private sector and make the country more competitive. Mr Hawke's expected to deliver the statement on Thursday, just days before Dr Hewson unveils his own consumption tax package. Julie Flynn, Canberra.
Police have charged a man after a youth was stabbed in the neck in a vacant lot at Sunbury this morning. Craig Wilson reports.
Police say the 16-year-old victim was stabbed at around 12:20 this morning in Richardson Street before two people overpowered the attacker and seized the knife. The youth was taken to the Royal Melbourne Hospital with a lacerated jugular vein and was in a satisfactory condition this morning after surgery. Police have charged 18-year-old Adam Girdwood with recklessly causing serious injury and intentionally causing serious injury. He's been remanded in custody by a bail justice at Sunbury Police Station and will appear before the Broadmeadows Magistrates Court tomorrow morning. Craig Wilson, Melbourne.
Turning to sports, and Victoria is in trouble in its Sheffield Shield cricket match against New South Wales at the SCG. Forced to follow on, the Vics are 2 for 153 at stumps on day 3, chasing New South Wales' first innings total of 459. Dean Jones is on 72 and night watchman Darren Berry 6. Earlier, Victoria was dismissed in its first innings for 260. Meantime, Tasmania is 5 for 314 in reply to South Australia's 414 at the Adelaide Oval. Europe has defeated Australia to take out the final of the Four Tours Golf Championship at Royal Adelaide. Europe won the final 8 points to 4, with Ronan Rafferty setting a new course record with an 8 under par round of 65. In the National Soccer League, Heidelberg 2 has drawn with Adelaide City 2, and Melbourne Croatia 1 has beaten Wollongong 0. News time is 8:04. Melbourne's weather, fine and mostly sunny tomorrow with a light to moderate southerly wind. The outlook for Tuesday, a few showers, about 18. Wednesday becoming fine, about 18 again. And Thursday, some showers late in the day in the low 20s. On the bays, west to southwest wind of 10 to 15 knots, reaching 20 knots in the south at times tonight. Waves of 1/2 to 1 metre. An overnight low of 8 and a top tomorrow of 19. It's now 14 degrees in Melbourne. I'm Ron Burke, 1278 3AW. Back now to Remember When with Bruce Mansfield and Philip Brady.
Building a bridge in Sydney over a harbour too, where all may cross in safety and busy trains pass through. A wonderful thing of beauty, passing the skies of blue. The best brains thought it, brave men wrought it, for each of our dreams come true.
Marvellous song commemorating the building of the bridge in Sydney, the Sydney Harbour Bridge. When it was built in the 30s, that was a relatively big hit for that local band, Len Maurice. I
It
believe
sounded
his name was.
very much like a Jack O'Hagan song, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
I think the year would probably be around 1932, and in fact the Sydney Harbour Bridge opened before the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
Gosh, that's something you don't know about.
Or fritters to those of us who go there regularly.
I wouldn't have realised that.
By the way, it was sad to see the passing of actress Jean Tierney over the weekend.
Oh, yes.
She's a wonderful actress. She died at the age of 70, and one of her big films, of course, was Laura with Clifton Webb, the murder mystery. One of three greats who died in the past week. The other two being Irwin Allen, of course, who produced all those disaster movies like The Poseidon Adventure and The Towering Inferno, and the third person, of course, being Fred McMurray, who died at the age of 83.
Right. Jean Tierney was one of the loveliest girls I had ever clapped my eyes on.
Got anything nice to say about Mr. McMurray or Mr. Irwin Allen?
I'm not going to say that about them. But I remember her in Laura with Clifton Webb.
Yes, I had a crush on her at one time.
Dana Andrews, she had that lovely, soft look about her eyes.
Yeah, she was from the same period as Ruth Roman and Ida Lupino, wasn't she?
That's right. And
Miss Tierney.
Dorothy Dandridge. Let me also just say that she had a very tragic life.
She did?
Miss Tierney.
Yes.
Yes, a tragic life.
To what extent?
Well,
Tell
I
me
think
more.
she fell off a horse on one occasion and never got through, you know.
I think that was Guy Mitchell.
Oh, we'll be talking to his widow very shortly. Who am I? Phil, are you listening?
I'm all ears, Bruce. So Marion wouldn't agree with that.
I started on Commotion and was a huge success. Somebody's Image came along and their lead singer was Russell Morris. I produced the record.
I'm Johnny Young.
I met the Young brothers, Angus, Malcolm and George in London. Their brother Alex was in Grapefruit, the first group to be signed by the Beatles.
Kinky.
I met Paul McCartney in a restaurant. It was a shock to actually meet him that I tried to shake hands, but I still had a knife in my hand. In late 1969, I produced Smiley for Ronnie Burns and records for Zoot, The Master's Apprentices, and helped out on John Farnham's One.
Rusty Wiley.
No. At the end of 1969, I travelled to London. No longer managing Russell Morris, I joined EMI in London. The studios were next to Abbey Road. One of my career highlights was to be involved with the world telecast of Bob Geldof's Live Aid.
Molly Meldrum.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
you.
Ian Molly Meldrum. It took half a page and I was running out of material to get to his name. Congratulations.
There you go. And speaking of stars, in this half hour, we'll be talking to 3AW's John Hindle.
Oh, terrific.
Following in the footsteps of Neil Mitchell, who spoke to us about 3 weeks ago.
John will reminisce about early Melbourne, the early Melbourne that he remembers as a little fella growing up in this great city. It's 8:10, 3AW's Remember When, and David Mann, our promotions manager, has been in tonight, and I inquired as to why, and he said, well, tomorrow morning on Lawyers, Guns and Money, they're awarding some lucky 3AW listener a Toyota Corolla with $10,000 in the boot.
Wonderful prize.
And he's just been cleaning it up with the chamois and the Ajax and getting it all spruced up for tomorrow morning's big announcement.
Oh, dollar bills floating all over the car park here at 3AW at the moment. 10,000 of them.
Don't you try and prise that boot open when you leave tonight, Phil. That would be disastrous.
Crossed my mind.
What can you play? What's on a Tabaret?
What's new at Tabaret? Tabaret Keno. It's a whole new ball game. Fantastic machines let you play Keno all day, every day, with the chance to win thousands. New Tabaret Keno at Tabaret, Rialto Plaza, Collins Street. It's different every day.
It's a Tabaret. It's different every day. It's all a Tabaret.
Oh, is it morning already? Buy a Sealy Posturepedic bed from Myer at savings of up to $400 during November, and you could wake up on a tropical island.
This is not my bedroom. It's Hamilton Island.
Simply take up the special Hamilton Island 7-day accommodation package, and with every Sealy Posturepedic double, queen or king-size purchase, we'll give you 2 free return airfares.
Oh, I'm not dreaming, am I?
The Myer Wake Up on Hamilton Island with Sealy offer. Hurry, offer ends November 30.
Bette Midler. You loved her in Beaches, Ruthless People, Down and Out in Beverly Hills. Now see the divine Miss M in an unforgettable first-release movie that has everything. Hilarious comedy, heartbreaking moments, courage and love. It'll hold you to the very last moment. The story of a woman who sacrificed the most important thing in her life for her daughter. See Bette Midler with Stephen Collins when Maudine presents Stella for the first time on television. Tonight on 7.
Neil Mitchell. If you want news, you need him because he's on top of it. If you want to hear opinions or just have to express them, he's the man. And when the big names come to town, he's the man they talk to. Like next week, just some of those names will be Hayley Mills, Jermaine Greer, and Maggie Tabler. Neil Mitchell. Informative, entertaining, and provocative. 8:30 to midday, Monday to Friday on 1278 3AW.